Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Alice and Bob Meet the Wall of Fire, The Biggest Ideas in Science from Quanta. Edited by Thomas Lynn. Forward by Sean Carroll. Narrated by Bob Souer. Men fear thought as they fear nothing else on earth, more than ruin, more even than death. Thought is subversive and revolutionary, destructive and terrible. Thought is merciless to privilege, established institutions, and comfortable habits. Thought is anarchic and lawless, indifferent to authority, careless of the well-tried wisdom of the ages. Thought looks into the pit of hell and is not afraid. It sees man, a feeble speck, surrounded by unfathomable depths of silence, yet it bears itself proudly, as unmoved as if it were Lord of the universe. Thought is great and swift and free, the light of the world, and the chief glory of man. Bertrand Russell in Why Men Fight. Forward, Sean Carroll. Quanta has been a revelation. All scientists are well aware that diplomatic relations across the border between science and journalism typically range from wary to downright hostile. It's not that there is any natural antipathy between the groups, both of which largely consist of dedicated professionals pursuing an honorable craft. Scientists attempt to discover true things about the natural world and rely on journalists to spread the word of those discoveries to a wide audience. Journalists hope to convey those discoveries in engaging and accurate ways and rely on scientists to help them understand and communicate. But the relevant sets of standards and incentives are different. Scientists lapse into jargon in an attempt to preserve precision, and they place enormous value on the precise attribution of credit. Journalists want to tell a human story that will be compelling to non-scientists, and they are naturally drawn to the most dramatic angle that can be attached to any particular finding. Thus, tension. Scientists find themselves insisting that the new way they have developed to slow down the speed of light through a crystal does not, in fact, open any potential routes to warp drive and/or time travel. Journalists have to gently explain that their 4-paragraph story won't actually be able to list all 12 co-authors of the original study, nor will there be room to explain the finer points of adiabatic softening. Scientists reluctantly go along with this, only to be aghast when 2 of the 4 paragraphs in the final article are devoted to the whimsical antics of the new puppy one of the grad students was bringing to the lab. These are the sacrifices we make for the sake of a human interest angle. Quanta was immediately, recognizably, a different kind of science magazine. It explains the real discoveries and speculations at the cutting edge without implying that they'll make science fiction come true. It lets interesting science be interesting science. I've seen my colleagues' eyes light up when Quanta is mentioned. Oh yeah, that magazine is amazing. They actually talk about science for real. It has also made an impact among journalists. I remember conversations with some of my writer friends along the lines of, "I'm really confused about what Quanta is looking for. I found a great anecdote about this puppy in a lab, but they seem to care more about what the lab is actually doing. That can't be right, can it?" The details are entirely fabricated, but the spirit of the conversation is accurate. And the Quanta approach will, I predict, make an impact on you as you hear the pieces in this collection. It's not that the stories are dry or devoid of human interests, quite the contrary. Scientists are people, and their hopes and fears come through vividly in these accounts. But the science is always paramount, and Quanta doesn't apologize for that. Such science it is. I'll confess my bias here, as this collection shines a spotlight on the kind of challenging, speculative, cutting-edge physics that is my own primary interest. When reading through these stories, I get the warm feeling that these are my people. It's an interesting time for fundamental physics. We have theories of surpassing rigor and beauty that also pass every experimental test. Quantum mechanics, Einstein's general relativity for gravity, the standard model of particle physics, and the hot Big Bang cosmological model. You'd think we would be happy, but at the same time we know that these theories are not the final story. they don't play well together, and they leave a number of crucial questions unanswered. How should we move forward in the absence of direct, actionable experimental clues? In cosmology, researchers have become increasingly intrigued by the notion that we live in a multiverse. That's not quite as philosophical as it sounds. What cosmologists actually mean by a multiverse is really a single universe, but one composed of multiple mutually inaccessible regions, in which the conditions are very different from those of all the others. It's not a dorm room fantasy. This conception of a multiverse arises naturally from inflationary cosmology and string theory, two of the most popular, though still speculative, ideas on the fundamental physics market today. In this book, you'll hear why physicists have been led to contemplate such extreme possibilities. It's not simply that cosmologists got bored and started positing a billion other universes. There are features of our universe here and now, observed in the lab, that might best be explained if we imagine that we live in just one of a large ensemble of universes. What's more, you'll come to appreciate that our apparent inability to observe a multiverse might not be as cut and dried as it seems. This is how science progresses. Researchers take on a tough problem, propose some outlandish-sounding solutions, and then work to wrestle those grandiose ideas into a down-and-dirty confrontation with the data. Not everyone is happy with the multiverse idea, of course. Plenty of working scientists are concerned that the concept is a step too far away from the real work of science, venturing into a realm of unfettered speculation, and the tensions are well documented here. Take a peek inside a gathering of some of the world's brightest minds, where banners are raised in a battle for the heart and soul of physics, human interest. Besides the structure of the universe as a whole, a major preoccupation of modern physics is the nature of space-time. You might think this was figured out a century back when Einstein put forward his general theory of relativity, according to which space and time are unified into a dynamical four-dimensional space-time whose twists and turns are observable to us as the force of gravity. That seems to be true at the classical level, the setup for physics worked out by Isaac Newton centuries ago, in which objects have definite positions and velocities. But now we know about quantum mechanics, which describes the world very differently. According to quantum mechanics, the observable world doesn't march forward with clockwork predictability. The best we can do in any particular situation is to calculate the probability of observing various possible outcomes of an experiment. The problem, and it's a big one, is that this quantum approach has not yet been reconciled with the curved space-time of general relativity. That's the issue of quantum gravity, which forms a major theme of the pieces collected here. In the title piece, Alice and Bob Meet the Wall of Fire, we are introduced to the firewall paradox. According to controversial recent research, quantum mechanics implies that observers falling into a black hole will be incinerated by a wall of fire, rather than ultimately being pulled apart by the gravitational field. This distasteful conclusion has led to some outlandish proposed solutions, up to and including the notion that particles that share quantum entanglement may also be associated with wormholes in space-time. Entanglement indeed may ultimately be responsible for the existence of space-time itself. All this talk of entanglement reminds us of a lurking worry when we gird our loins to tackle the difficult problem of quantum gravity. If we're honest about it, we don't really understand quantum mechanics itself, even without dragging gravity into the picture. There's no question that we can use quantum mechanics both to make staggeringly precise predictions and to uncover the hidden beauty in the dynamics of particles and fields. But ask physicists what quantum mechanics actually is, and they'll look nervous and discomfited. People have ideas, of course, some of which you will meet here. Maybe they will find hidden variables like the kind Einstein and others dreamed of long ago, or perhaps they can build the entire edifice from scratch. Or perhaps the secret to reconciling quantum theory with space-time isn't a better understanding of the quantum, but a better understanding of time. Maybe quantum effects are crucial to understanding the prosaic-seeming question of why time moves forward and not backward. Or, even more dramatically, perhaps entanglement is at the heart of what time itself really is. All of this might seem like an overabundance of perhapses and maybes. Isn't science supposed to be a repository of firm, established truths about nature? Eventually, yes. But the process of getting there is messy and unpredictable, full of false starts and discarded hypotheses. The focus in Quanta is on science at the cutting edge, where things are never simple. You can see the dialectical process in action in A Debate Over the Physics of Time. It's an up-close view of physicists and philosophers coming together to exchange ideas and occasionally shout at each other. I'm sick and tired of this block universe. Yes, we really talk like that. The science in this book is by no means confined to physics. Among all the sciences, physics seems hard because it is actually quite simple. That is, we can take a basic system like a rocking pendulum or a planet orbiting the sun and explain more or less exactly how it behaves. Having accomplished this, we move on to harder things: curved space-time, subatomic particles, the origin of the universe itself. A lot of the low-hanging fruit has already been picked, leaving cutting-edge research to concern itself with some extremely ambitious ideas. The rest of science is messier and correspondingly harder. In biology, we can take a basic system like an earthworm or even a bacterium and, well, suffice it to say, we are nowhere close to offering up an exact description of how these things work. Physics leans heavily on the fact that we can often ignore large sets of complications, friction, noise, air resistance, and still get a pretty good answer. In the wild and woolly world of biological complexity, all of the pieces matter. In Quanta's takes on biology and life, a couple of themes emerge. One, unsurprisingly, is Darwin's theory of evolution by natural selection. Perhaps more surprising is how much richer the paradigm has become as scientists continue to tinker with it. Darwin himself, of course, knew nothing of microbiology or DNA, and modern scientists are racing to improve our understanding of how genetic information is passed down through generations. And in a game-changing discovery whose ultimate implications are still far from understood, a tool called CRISPR promises to allow us to dig into the basic letters of the genetic code to edit DNA directly. The CRISPR piece surely won't be the last story about gene editing to appear in Quanta. It holds the promise to revolutionize medicine and perhaps exert profound changes on what it means to be human. Another theme is the origin of life and its complexity. One might worry that life seems paradoxical when considered in the broader sweep of cosmic history. According to the second law of thermodynamics, entropy, a measure of disorder or randomness, increases over time. How, then, did something as orderly and non-random as living beings come into existence? An intriguing modern view is that this isn't a paradox at all, but rather a natural connection. Perhaps life began not despite the increase in entropy, but because of it. After all, although an individual organism may be intricately ordered, it will inevitably increase the entropy of the universe by the simple fact that it metabolizes food to stay alive. But we would still like a detailed historical understanding of why life became complex in the particular ways that it did. It seems possible that this is a process that happens even if natural selection doesn't nudge us in that direction. Even structures as specific as neurons may have independently come into existence more than once. Among all the leaves on the tree of life, the one that many of us are most curious about is humanity itself. Evolution, needless to say, plays a central role in explaining how we became who we are. Homo sapiens didn't burst into existence fully formed like Athena from the brow of Zeus. Our plucky ability to thrive in a diverse set of environments may be a legacy of the genes we inherited from our prehistoric ancestors. What truly set us apart, of course, was the brain boom that began 3 million years ago, when the human brain began to almost quadruple in size in comparison to that of its predecessors. The quest to understand how that brain works will doubtless keep scientists occupied for many generations to come. One step is simply to understand how our mind's various capacities are assembled over the course of our early lives. It happens rapidly. Within 6 months after birth, an infant's brain has the same basic organization as that of an adult. Once it's assembled, as marvelous as it is, the brain falls far short of being a perfectly rational machine. If you feel a twinge of guilt at your inability to resist another slice of pizza or an extra scoop of ice cream, take solace in the fact that these tendencies are simply part of a neurological optimization strategy as the brain saves its energy for more important tasks. Even something as fundamentally human as the tendency to get lonely can be given a scientific explanation as a type of incentive to inspire us to social cooperation. Brains matter because we use them to think. What is this thinking on which we place such value? For many years, scientists and philosophers have speculated that something akin to human thought could also conceivably take place inside a mechanical device, such as a computer. We may be entering the first generation in which this prediction will be put to the test. Along some fronts, progress has been impressive. Model brains built from tiny atomic switches can learn new things, and artificial agents can display something recognizable as curiosity. Computers nowadays handily defeat the world's best chess players, and recent victories at the even more complex game of Go hint at the development of something that might even be labeled intuition. A great deal of excitement has accompanied the rise of deep learning, a method of allowing networks of artificial neurons to train themselves to recognize and manipulate high-level concepts. Despite some initial successes, there is a lingering worry that after such a network trains itself, its creators can't understand how it is actually doing what it does. So begins the quest to construct a theory of deep learning. Surveying the scope and depth of this collection of articles, one cannot help but feel optimistic about the future of not only science but also science journalism. In neither case is the optimism pure and unadulterated. On the science side, we must always be prepared for those times when our experiments don't give us the answers we were hoping for. That's happened in recent years in particle physics, where the lack of new particles to be found beyond the Higgs boson has left physicists scratching their heads and wondering whether there's a fundamental mistake in how we've been thinking about nature. But for every disappointment, there are multiple triumphs. The detection of gravitational waves from merging black holes and neutron stars has sparked a revolution that promises to energize astrophysics for years to come. Whatever our frustrations may be with the current pace of scientific progress, we must remember that it's not the universe's job to keep us happy. It's our job to do the best we can at uncovering its secrets. At the same time, science journalism has suffered from the general downturn in traditional media coverage, including an elimination of many staff jobs at newspapers and magazines. Reason for hope is to be found in a broadening ecosystem as a wide variety of outlets have sprung into existence. Within this group, Quanta is a guiding light, providing other media with an example of science writing at its best. In a sense, these stories are a snapshot of a moment in time. The thing about the cutting edge is that it keeps moving. Some of the scientific ideas explored here will fade away or be dramatically ruled out, whereas others will become absolutely central to how we think about the universe. However, the ideal of communicating science by taking it seriously, by wrestling with difficult concepts and explaining them in honest, clear language, that is here to stay. Introduction. Thomas Lynn, Quanta Magazine Editor-in-Chief. It's hard to beat a good science or math story. Take the events of July 4, 2012. That morning, scientists at the world's biggest physics experiment, the Large Hadron Collider near Geneva, Switzerland, made the biggest announcement of their lives. After investing 20 years in the effort to design and construct the LHC, only to suffer a demoralizing malfunction soon after it went online in 2008, they had finally discovered the Higgs boson, a particle without which life and the universe as we know it could not exist. The next year, Peter W. Higgs and François Englert, whose theoretical work in the 1960s predicted the Higgs particle, won the Nobel Prize in Physics. A year later, the documentary film Particle Fever chronicled the hopes and dreams of the thousands of researchers behind the Higgs discovery. In one of my favorite scenes, the theorist David Kaplan is shown in 2008 explaining to a packed lecture hall why they built what the experimentalist Monica Dunford calls a 5-story Swiss watch. Unmoved by Kaplan's talk, an economist demands to know what people stand to gain from the multi-billion-dollar experiment. What's the economic return? How do you justify all this? I have no idea, Kaplan answers bluntly. He must get this question all the time. Patiently, he explains that big breakthroughs in basic science occur at a level where you're not asking, what is the economic gain? You're asking, what do we not know and where can we make progress? In their purest forms, science and mathematics are not about engineering practical applications or cashing in on them, though those things often do happen later, sometimes much later. They're about learning something you didn't know before. So, what is the LHC good for? Kaplan asks the economist, setting up the death blow. It could be nothing other than just understanding everything. As it happens, this book picks up where Particle Fever leaves off in telling the story of the quest to understand everything. The renowned theoretical physicist Nima Arkani Hamed has described such efforts in fundamental physics as trying to understand, in the simplest possible way, the smallest set of basic principles from which everything else in principle follows. The fewer the assumptions, the approximations, the contortions, or so the thinking goes, the closer we are to the truth. The Higgs boson has been discovered, and the standard model of particle physics is now complete. The problem is, absent new particles beyond the standard model, the universe doesn't make sense. How, then, are we to make sense of it? In Alice and Bob Meet the Wall of Fire, the biggest ideas in science from Quanta, and The Prime Number Conspiracy, the biggest ideas in math from Quanta, we join some of the greatest scientific and mathematical minds as they test the limits of human knowledge. The stories presented in these two companion volumes reveal efforts over the past 5 years or so to untangle the mysteries of the universe, its origins and basic laws, its contents big and small, its profoundly complex living inhabitants, and to unlock the universal language of nature. They penetrate the big questions and uncover some of the best ideas and theories for understanding our physical, biotic, and logical worlds. Meanwhile, they illuminate the essential issues under debate as well as the obstacles hindering further progress. In selecting and editing Quanta Magazine articles for these volumes, I tried to venture beyond the usual mixtape format of best of anthologies and greatest hits compilations. Instead, I wanted to send readers on breathtaking intellectual journeys to the bleeding edge of discovery, strapped to the narrative rocket of humanity's never-ending pursuit of knowledge. But what might those excursions actually look like? These non-fiction adventures, it turns out, explore core questions about the essence of prime numbers, whether our universe is natural, the natures of time and infinity, our strange quantum reality, whether space-time is fundamental or emergent, the insides and outsides of black holes, the origin and evolution of life, what makes us human, the hopes for and limitations of computing, the role of mathematics in science and society, and just where these questions are taking us. The stories in these books reveal how cutting-edge research is done, how the productive tension between theory, experiment, and mathematical intuition, through triumphs, failures, and null results, cuts a path forward. What is quanta? Albert Einstein called photons quanta of light. Quanta Magazine strives to illuminate the dark recesses in science and mathematics, where some of the most provocative and fundamental ideas are cultivated out of public view. Not that anyone is trying to hide them. The work hides in plain sight at highly technical conferences and workshops, on the preprint site arxiv.org, and in impenetrable academic journals. These are not easy subjects to understand, even for experts in adjacent fields, so it's not surprising that only Higgs-level discoveries are widely covered by the popular press. The story of quanta began in 2012, just weeks after the Higgs announcement. With the news industry still reeling from the 2008 financial crisis and secular declines in print advertising, I had the not-so-brilliant idea to start a science magazine. The magazine I envisioned would apply the best editorial standards of publications like the New York Times and the New Yorker, but its coverage would differ radically from that of existing news outlets. For one thing, it wouldn't report on anything you might actually find useful. This magazine would not publish health or medical news or breathless coverage of the latest technological breakthroughs. There would be no advice on which foods or vitamins to consume or avoid, which exercises to wedge into your day, which gadgets are must-buys. No stories about crumbling infrastructure or awesome feats of engineering. It wouldn't even keep you updated about the latest NASA mission, exoplanet find, or SpaceX rocket launch. There's nothing wrong with any of this, of course. When accurately reported, deftly written, and carefully fact-checked, it's news you can use. But I had other ideas. I wanted a science magazine that helps us achieve escape velocity beyond our own small worlds, but is otherwise useless in the way the LHC is useless. This useless magazine became Quanta. My colleagues and I also treat our readers differently. We don't protect them from the central concepts or from the process of how new ideas come to be. Indeed, the ridiculously difficult science and math problems and the manner in which an individual or collaboration makes progress serve as the very conflicts and resolutions that drive quanta narratives. We avoid jargon, but we don't protect readers from the science itself. We trust readers, whether they have a science background or not, to be intellectually curious enough to want to know more, so we give you more. Like the magazine, this book is for anyone who wants to understand how nature works, what the universe is made of, and how life got its start and evolved into its myriad forms. It's for curiosity seekers who want a front-row seat for breakthroughs to the biggest mathematical puzzles and whose idea of fun is to witness the expansion of our mathematical universe. If I may offer an adaptation of Shel Silverstein's famous lyric invitation, my apologies to the late Mr. Silverstein. If you are a dreamer, come in. If you are a dreamer, a thinker, a curiosity seeker, a theorizer, an experimenter, a mathematiker, if you're a tinkerer, come fill my beaker, for we have some mind-bending puzzles to examine. Come in, come in. 1. Why doesn't our universe make sense? Is nature unnatural? Natalie Walchover. On an overcast afternoon in late April 2013, physics professors and students crowded into a wood-paneled lecture hall at Columbia University for a talk by Nima Arkani-Hamed, a high-profile theorist visiting from the Institute for Advanced Study in nearby Princeton, New Jersey. With his dark, shoulder-length hair shoved behind his ears, Arkani-Hamed laid out the dual, seemingly contradictory implications of recent experimental results at the Large Hadron Collider in Europe. The universe is inevitable, he declared. The universe is impossible. The spectacular discovery of the Higgs boson in July 2012 confirmed a nearly 50-year-old theory on how elementary particles acquire mass, which enables them to form big structures such as galaxies and humans. The fact that it was seen more or less where we expected to find it is a triumph for experiment. It's a triumph for theory, and it's an indication that physics works, Arkani-Hamed told the crowd. However, in order for the Higgs boson to make sense with the mass or equivalent energy it was determined to have, the LHC needed to find a swarm of other particles too. None turned up. With the discovery of only one particle, the LHC experiments deepened a profound problem in physics that had been brewing for decades. Modern equations seem to capture reality with breathtaking accuracy, correctly predicting the values of many constants of nature and the existence of particles like the Higgs. Yet a few constants, including the mass of the Higgs boson, are exponentially different from what these trusted laws indicate they should be, in ways that would rule out any chance of life unless the universe is shaped by inexplicable fine-tunings and cancellations. In peril is the notion of naturalness, Albert Einstein's dream that the laws of nature are sublimely beautiful, inevitable, and self-contained. Without it, physicists face the harsh prospect that those laws are just an arbitrary, messy outcome of random fluctuations in the fabric of space and time. In papers, talks, and interviews, Arkani-Hamed and many other top physicists are confronting the possibility that the universe might be unnatural. There is wide disagreement, however, about what it would take to prove it. 10 or 20 years ago, I was a firm believer in naturalness, said Nathan Seberg, a theoretical physicist at the Institute.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?